Okay, so there are currently 4 budget cubes that have released this year. That is, in order, the Qiyi MS, the Meilong 3M, the RS3M 2020, and the Little Magic M. Now, the way I'm going to compare these cubes is, I have some listed categories like feel, corner cutting, and customization and all that, and I'll go give you my subjective opinion and how I think those cubes perform in those aspects. And based on that information, you can choose which characteristics you want in the cube, and just overall which cube you think will be best for you. So let's get into it. So the first category is feel, and just basically how the cube feels, right? So starting with the Qiyi MS, the cube is very average, and it has a very clacky feel, which is definitely determined through its sound. You can hear here. Now, I don't think it's exactly a good or satisfying feel, but it's just there, and that's pretty much the best way of me explaining it. Like, just doing an R move, you can already hear the clackiness of the cube, which I think I kind of dislike just a little bit, but realize that it's just a turning, and many other characteristics of a cube can affect its performance. So, now for the Meilong 3M. So this cube feels not exactly smooth, but quite soft. At least when it's lubed, which I probably forgot how it felt before lubing. But the softness of the cube makes it feel quite nice and maybe a little satisfying. Another thing I think is that the mechanism in the cube shows that the pieces have a lot of contact with each other. It doesn't make the cube feel like it has a lot of friction, but it accentuates the soft feeling in the cube. And I think that the soft feel is what makes this cube unique. Now, I think I'm making this cube sound a bit premium, but honestly, you can still probably tell that this is a budget cube. And the plastic is soft, however, it does feel a little cheap, just a little. You'll actually find that with some of the cubes mentioned in this video, so yes. And yes, I said some. And that brings me to the RS3M 2020. Now, the feeling in this cube is very confusing and it's pretty hard to describe. Now, this cube is lubed, but along with the smooth internal coating that lubes usually give, I feel as if the cube will always have just a slight sandy feeling. Now, believe it or not, the sandy feeling is actually pretty satisfying in my opinion, and it's kind of confusing because it's not really the kind of sandiness that you get from like a newly unboxed cube from 2015. Now, what I should also get to is that the plastic feels premium. Okay, now I can't exactly tell you why or how it feels premium, because I feel like characteristics that make the cube feel premium or cheap is just something you can feel and just instantly tell, right? And it's kind of hard for me to explain, at least for me, because I suck at explaining. But anyways, this cube feels premium, especially for its price. Now for the Little Magic. Now, the Little Magic felt very sandy out of the box, and I think setup is kind of mandatory with this cube. So after lubing, it made the cube feel more smooth, but what kind of smooth? Definitely a silky smooth. However, it's not completely silky. I do feel a bit of sandiness, but I feel like I only feel it when I'm turning slow. But maybe a little similar to the RS3M, it's not a bad or unsatisfying sandy feel. Yeah, definitely not. And the cube also feels a bit high quality actually. Maybe at the level of the RS3M, or maybe a little less, I don't know. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is rank these by which I think is best in terms of its turning. I think definitely the Qiyi MS is in last place. I think the Meilong next, just because you kind of feel a lot of the cheap plastic. I really hate saying that, but it's kind of true. This is kind of surprising, but that and then the Little Magic. Just because, I don't know, it just feels a lot. There's a combination of smoothness and high quality plastic in the Little Magic. So yeah, so if you're deciding which cube to buy, do not base it on this ranking, because this is just feel, okay? There's many more characteristics that we have to go through before you can make your decision on which cube you want to buy. So let's get into the next category. Now let's get into corner cutting, which honestly I don't think is something that should be looked upon much, but it's kind of important this time because it's pretty interesting in these cubes. So starting with the Qiyi MS, give me some time to explain, but this cube does not have great corner cutting. It cannot cut past 45 degrees, but I should also say that when I'm actually solving, you really don't feel a restriction in corner cutting. So yeah, do not let corner cutting be your main worry when considering to buy this cube. Now for the Meilong 3M, the cube's corner cutting is pretty decent, cutting past 45 degrees but with some effort. Reverse is also pretty decent, and that's pretty much it for the Meilong 3M. Onto the RS3M 2020, which I think has the best corner cutting of all the 4 cubes mentioned in this video. It cuts past 45 degrees very easily, and reverse is also on par with top level speed cubes. Now for the Yushin Little Magic M. Now this cube has decent corner cutting, cutting past 45 with a pretty big amount of effort, but the reverse though is pretty good actually. Now I do have to say, when I'm solving, I actually feel quite a bit of restriction in corner cutting, which definitely affects my solves, so definitely keep that in mind. Now let's get into a much more important category, and that is controllability / stability / fluidity. I don't know which one, but when I said not to base your decision on the rankings from the category of feeling, when I rank these cubes based on the controllability / stability, I wouldn't blame you if you decided on which cube to buy when I rank these cubes after this category, because I think that it's the most important aspect in a cube. So, starting with the Qiyi MS, the controllability and fluidity in this cube is pretty good. As I said before, I don't feel a big restriction in corner cutting, even though it is a bit bad when testing. And I should also say that lookups in this cube are not a huge problem, so that's great. Now for the Meilong M. Now on this cube, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it's kind of blocky, and I should have said this in the corner cutting category, but I feel like the corner cutting is a bit lacking in this cube, just a little bit. And because of this, I have to turn a little more accurately, and now this isn't much of an issue, but it does affect my solves, but only a small amount. Now for the RS3M, I should start by saying that this cube needs to be lubed. Like, it's a bit too fast out of the box, so I lubed it instantly in order for it to be at least controllable. Now after lubing, the controllability and fluidity in this cube is almost perfect. Now I say almost because I do experience just a little bit of lockups, and I think the blame on that would be because of the weak magnets. Now there is a solution. Like I've said many times, you can buy an extra set of magnets in the cubicle for $1. So yeah, get those to improve the RS3M if you decide on buying that. Now for the Yushin Little Magic, which I think has probably the worst controllability of all the cubes in this video. Now when I'm solving, I don't exactly get lookups, but sometimes I feel like the corner cutting is just bad when I'm solving. Now, like I said, the corner cutting is pretty good, but when I'm actually solving, I don't know, it's just bad, and that affects my solves quite a bit. So yes, definitely keep in mind when deciding which cube to buy. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is rank them based on their controllability / fluidity. No, Yushin Little Magic, definitely last place in this one. I have to choose between the Qiyi MS or the Meilong. This is hard. I'm gonna just put Meilong third and then Qiyi MS second, but keep in mind this is pretty much a tie for these two, okay? And then definitely the RS3M 2020 in first place. So yeah, this is first, these two are basically second, they're basically tied, and this one's in last place, so there we go. Now, I think the last thing that I'm going to go over are the advantages or perks that each of these cubes have. So, starting with the Qiyi MS, and I think its biggest advantage is, and it's a pretty big one, that it does not require any setup. Like, I literally unboxed it and decided that it was perfect the way it was. So, if lube is a bit of a struggle for you, consider this cube. I can't quite think of a good perk for the Meilong 3M, but I guess one could be that it's the cheapest. Yeah, that's one. It's $6 on the cubicle, so cool. Now for the RS3M, its biggest advantage is that it has Meilong's dual adjustment system, which is great for adjusting the cube to be more suitable for you. So yeah, it is also the most expensive cube, so that kind of makes more sense, but it's still a budget cube, so yeah. Now I could barely think of an advantage for the Yushin Magic M, but it has glossy plastic, so I don't know, but it's more of an aesthetic thing, or maybe something that helps you with grip, I'm not sure, but honestly, it doesn't affect my solves too much, so there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to give all these cubes the final ranking of which I think is best overall. Okay, so I think the Yushin Magic is in last place, sadly. Then I think it's the Qiyi MS, okay? Then the Meilong, and then definitely the RS3M in first place. Now for the Yushin Magic, sadly in fourth place, it honestly has a pretty good feel, right? But the controllability is just bad, and it affects my solves quite a bit. And that's pretty much the main reason, and it's a pretty big aspect, so that's why I think it's in last place. Now for the Qiyi MS, the reason why it's third is because it's pretty controllable. It has bad corner cutting, but you don't feel much of a restriction, maybe just a tiny bit. And my solves flow pretty well. However, the feeling of the cube really just isn't enjoyable because of its clacky feel. And I feel like just the feeling experience when you're solving it kind of affects your solving experience, so that's why it's in third place, right? Now for the Meilong. And the reason why I think it's better than the Qiyi MS is because it's just much more forgivable. I can't exactly explain why, but I do think though that it is a bit blocky, and it makes me turn a bit more accurately when solving, and I don't really like having to do that, but it doesn't really affect my solves that much, so yeah. And now for the RS3M 2020. Now if you didn't know, the Angstrom RS3M is my main, so putting the original version in first place really isn't a surprise for me, but this cube flows amazingly during solves. Again, it does need to be lubed, but I feel like it suits my turning style the best of all these cubes. So I think the RS3M 2020 is the cube I recommend to all speed cubers, especially those in a budget, because this is definitely the best budget cube. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at CatTheCuber. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.